What I'm going to be covering today is my process for the past few years on how I've been able to approach projects and go through concepting and coming up with ideas and then bringing them to life. And it's really going to be consider it one of our workflow and my process for how I do it. And of course, it relies on some of the common practices in the user experience field. And I hope you guys can take some of this, put it in practice. I believe in the audience we have a good mix of developers, maybe some designers, entrepreneurs maybe. But I hope that no matter what your background is, that you can grab something from here and put it into practice. Just some quick facts about me. I work at Safety Metro here in the Miami office, and I have been there for the past 8 years and doing experience design. I have also been helping with the IXDA global chapter here in Miami. You guys didn't know it existed. We got it up and running. We got it back up and running about a year ago. Previously, someone else was running it, but we brought it back. And I'm also involved with the World Information Architecture Day, and that's pretty geeky. But it's a yearly conference that the IA Institute hosts, and it's a free event, and that's going to be hosted on February 20th, about 2 weeks, and it's going to be at the University of Miami. So I'm happy with that, and I hope you guys can join. We're going to be hosting and having multiple talks. And on my time off, I do a lot of mountain biking. If you're not here from here in Florida, we do have great mountain bike trips. There are no mountains, but it's pretty fun. So this first section, I'm going to cover my process for how to generate ideas and come up with concepts. And typically, if we have any experienced designers or UXers in the room, we are the ones that usually get challenged with solving problems, and we're kind of always spearheading the theme. This is not necessarily meant for experienced designers, but again, if you're an entrepreneur or a developer, this can help you, think about how we go through our process, and if you happen to be part of it, how you can be part of it. And it begins with understanding the problem. It sounds pretty obvious, right? Every time you're getting onto a project, you want to make sure that you understand what it is that you're being asked to solution for. But it is a key process before you start putting pen and paper and thinking about solutions. I find a lot of times we sort of rush and we don't go through absorbing the right inputs, and that doesn't end up in a good problem. So one of the first things is requirements. Again, it might be pretty obvious. You always want those on any project, but typically, depending on your setup and your environment, you may get none. And I'm sure everyone has been on projects where you get no requirements. And you want to build something, but there's no documentation, there's no paper. That's one scenario. Another scenario is where you may get a lot of them and you get really confused. And that's potentially a good scenario, right? So you're probably getting a lot of detail. But the idea for requirements, at least applying it to concepting, is you want to understand the business goals and the business needs. And it varies from category to category depending on the industry that you happen to be working in. But yeah, you want to understand what you're trying to ultimately influence, right? So you you might be working on a small piece, redesigning a form, a registration form, or you might be tackling a website redesign. So no matter what the scale is, you want to understand, am I trying to increase registration signups and conversions, or you're trying to go for a redesign and you have all these business goals in mind that you have to make sure you're solving for your client. So that's the key thing here. You wanna understand what the business priority is. And now kind of flipping to the other side, then looking at personas, right? And this is where we really get to empathize with whomever the audience is. And again, I'm probably being or emphasizing things that are obvious, but again, not everyone gets the luxury to work with this type of input. Similar with requirements. A lot of times you may get nothing. A lot of times you may get persona overload. But the key insight here is you wanna understand who you're solving for, right? You want to understand what their habits are, what the demographics are. As many of those traits as you can gather, it will help you shape out your thinking. And if you don't have personas, something I ran into recently is the concept of provisional personas. So typically personas are big, expensive research projects. And again, if you are in a startup or you're freelancing, you may not have all the resources to get into that exercise. So put simply, what provisional personas are, they are kind of a quick and dirty approach to generate more of an archetype. You probably won't get as high quality output as deep research, but you can rely on previous surveys, analytics data, talking to a service representative at a call center, talking to your client and gathering key inputs to help you sort of shape out who the audience is. And again, that's sort of kind of the quick way to get personas. So you want to make sure you have a sense at least of what the segment is or what your target audience is. And here I grabbed a really good example. It was done by MailChimp. They're one of the big mail service companies. And this is pretty cool what they did. I mean, not only is it kind of hipster-like, but they did a pretty good job with this, where they actually just made big poster-size printouts and they put them around the office. So that's another key thing that you want to do as you're solving. You want to make sure that you're always being aware of who it is that you're solving for. And I know this is not what personas typically look like, but this is kind of a good representation where you may not be as intimidated to absorb and empathize with. And the next thing are user journeys, right? So now you probably went through a lot of requirements. You kind of know what the business wants. You have a sense of who the persona is, who your target audience is. And now you want to understand the user journey, right? So what a user journey does, at least for me, is it helps you understand the end-to-end process for the particular category that you're working in, right? And it helps you identify the key touch points, right? So hopefully some of you have seen them, but for a long time, everything was like stock-centric, but now we are kind of the Internet of Things where, a single person like me, I can be using my smartphone, my tablet, I have a wearable, I'm interacting, with, my credit card, and all of those are different touch points, right? So if I do take banking, for example, you might see different key touch points where, you as the designer or the person who's trying to solve the problem, you might say, you're going to spend time on only 2 or 3 touch points to optimize the user experience. Typically, you don't try to influence everything. You sort of really get an understanding of what the journey is, and then you say, I'm going to concentrate on my mobile component and my tablet component here. And there could be also offline or physical touch points. But the key thing is to know where the opportunities are and to help you prioritize. This is a good example. I think I mentioned banking. This is probably not as good up here in the screen, but it is the end-to-end journey for someone that's trying to create an online account. And here we have the awareness phase where someone might be browsing the web or going to the shake.com or backofamerica.com, and they become aware that there's an online account, right? And then they might research deeper into it, and hopefully that entices them enough that they register, and then they realize the benefits, right? And up here you're seeing different touch points and what they're doing, and up there, in this particular example, we try to capture what the emotion is of that user. And so again, this typically goes hand in hand with personas, where you try to visualize and empathize with someone and how they're going through the journey. And then to layer on top of journeys, this is where you really get to break it down. Like I was saying previously, it's not every time that you take a user journey with, say, 20 touch points and you try to solve for all of them. I don't think you really ever do that in a single shot. Most likely, you're probably going to find a handful of scenarios that are pretty relevant for the business, right? So you want to identify those and prioritize those scenarios. And what this helps you later in the process is to frame your thinking when you're ready to concept ideas and start to sketch and visualize them. And then another artifact or another activity that you may get into is, depending on maybe how complex or how intricate the business rules are, you may want to do user flows. Because then you want to get a little deeper into the logic and really understand. If we go back to the registration example, you want to understand. You have 5 screens, and there are some decision points that are happening there, and that's kind of the ugly side, but it really helps you understand the logic. And when you're going through this, there's typically, if you're tackling an existing product, you might do an existing or a current state, right? And you might see that your registration process that you're trying to redesign has 10 steps, right? And you might say, well, maybe I can bring it down to 5, right? And that becomes your challenge. But that becomes apparent by doing this type of exercise. And user flows are used in different ways, and I'm just trying to apply it to sort of the concept in track for now. And the same principles. I think this is something that has become a standard in a lot of agencies and companies. And even though it's become standard, they're not easy to come up with. They require a lot of thought. It is what sets the boundaries or the filters for what you're trying to design, right? So some basic examples might be, and I think this applies to probably any project. You want to make sure that your design is simple. You want to make sure that it's clear, that it's uncluttered, right? Those are kind of single keywords, but they become principles that your team and yourself you can be aware of as you're designing, right? And it helps you really filter your work. And those are sort of the simple default principles, right? But then they can also become more branded or more custom to the category that you're solving for. And again, taking out banking, for example, you might make it more specific and say, transact with confidence, right? And that will probably go with a nice explanation of what that means, but you're now using language that's specific to the category. So what I discovered really quick, I don't think I presented anything that's out of the ordinary, but hopefully, hopefully that shows you the type of setup that that you need to have to get into a concept phase, right? So just at a high level, you try to understand the business, and ultimately, and most importantly, you try to empathize with users. And other type of inputs that you might get, maybe created by you or by another team, depending on the size. You might get a competitor review, right? That'll tell you, okay, who's doing well, who's doing not as well, and what opportunities are there. You might get into a heuristic assessment if it is an existing product. And if you're not familiar with heuristics, they're basically an expert evaluation, and they're typically done by usability or user experience experts. And it's going through a process of making observations of the current state, right? And the output of that is similar to the competitor review, but specifically for the piece of software that you're solving for. And you might do stakeholder interviews. I think I mentioned this with personas, right? So you might get to talk to team members, clients. You want to make some assumptions a lot of times, and make sure you have problem statements. And last but not least, technology, right? So again, a lot of us get on projects, and we get imposed with a particular CMS and a specific front-end component, and being aware of what those are and how they work helps you shape out your thinking. So that is as far as understanding the problem and trying to make sense of what you need to do. And now this next phase is really where you get to go out and look for inspiration. We all find it in different places. I'll take you through those places that are working for me. Some of those may work for you guys as well, but the idea for this is that you find what works for you. And it's also my favorite part of the process. When I travel or when I have idle time and I'm not actively thinking about solving the problem, that's usually when some of the good ideas just come because my subconsciousness is working all the time, and some of you might be familiar with that. And that just works for me. Like when I jump on a plane and I'm out there, all of a sudden, a thought comes through, and it's being aware of those moments, right? So again, this is specific for me, but for you guys may happen at different times, different places. And best thing to do when that happens is write it on a piece of paper, do a voice note. Sometimes I do that. Or if you have your laptop, throw it in Evernote or whatever note-taking app you use. And then we get into pattern libraries. Here I have some examples that I use often. There's a lot more than this if you Google design patterns. They're really good at helping you solve problems and to not recreate the wheel. So what design patterns are, they are solutions to common design problems, right? When you think about a banking interface, and you're looking at your transactions, right? You expect to have a filters toolbar, and you expect to have a grid, and you have certain expectations of how that needs to work. And we don't need to recreate it every time, because some of the patterns have become web conventions, and the closer you stay to those, the better your product, will be. And of course, we get to create from scratch, but a lot of the time, you may go here and you're going to be picking patterns that are solving the problem that you're trying to solve. These are some examples of books that are out there. So as much as I like the web and I spent a lot of time browsing, books are just good. And this one I have had for the past 8 years. It's similar to the online libraries, but you're holding something physical, and it's just a different format. So a lot of times I do a combination of both. I look at the web libraries and I go back here. And there are some specific ones, like if you're say tackling a search engine, there are search patterns, right? So you don't need to go on, recreate the wheel. And then for mobile, right? Which is, I think, something that everyone is trying, is having solved for. It used to be kind of a specialty, but it kind of became, standard for any product. So again, just 3 examples. There are more out there. They're usually handy for me when I get stuck. If you go on the web and not finding what you're looking for. These are typically good for that scenario. And then I also look at different award sites. And I'm not a fan of awards, and I typically don't do my work, so I can go in a Webby or FWA. But they are really good compilations of good examples from everywhere, right? So, and they're very, very organized by category. So if you're working in finance or healthcare, banking, editorial, you can go in a lot of these, and you'll see, historical examples from previous years. There's just tons of sites and pieces of software that get submitted, and they're not just limited to web. It really goes beyond web interfaces. So some examples. There are more, but I'm sure some of you may have other places that work for you, and I think this is what that's about. And previously I mentioned, as part of your inputs, you might get competitor review. And even if you get that, I definitely suggest that you become familiar with the competitive set, right? So when you talk to your clients, they're going to be just as familiar or more educated on who's doing what, and you want to be at par with their knowledge. So that's one thing. The other thing is it helps you identify opportunities, right? So you're going to see who's down here and who's not here, and then hopefully you're going to try to take it up a notch. And getting into this gives you that perspective. But you may not go in and find good examples within the same vertical or the same competitive set. So you may go into comparable fields. It happened to me when I was working in healthcare, and healthcare in general is not a good experience. But when I was trying to work for this client, I didn't really have good examples to look at. I kind of ran out of options. I was like, everything is bad. I'm not really running into anything good here. So I switched to banking and finance. And a lot of the things that are done in that space were applicable to what I was doing, right? So if you run out of options in a niche or a space where there's little innovation, you might go into other similar fields. And then I think this is one where we get to have fun. You get into looking at, what are the trends right now? What are the emerging technologies? What can I play with? And some of the ones that are busting right now are virtual reality, the Internet of Things, mobile behavior and how that's changing. There's also another one that I just picked up, which is conversational commerce, which is basically relying on artificial intelligence and these automated bots that have their own knowledge. Those are just some examples, but being aware of what's out there and what technologies and insights can help you generate ideas. And in simple terms, you might see, for example, the Oculus Rift, the headset for virtual reality, and you may try to apply it to your space, right? And I'm sure some of you here have done that, but it is definitely one of the pieces where you get to have fun. And something else may sound obvious, but you want to make sure you have a sense of where your client is, and that helps you, again, shape out your thinking, and when it's time to present and pitch your ideas, it gives you a better chance that it resonates with them, right? So taking virtual reality for, as an example, if you decide to take up on that, you better do your research, right, and become familiar with that, with how it works and what the process is and what you can do with it, right? And that basically will enable you to articulate in front of your client, right? So if you have an IT client, you probably want to know like the technical inner workings of that, or if you're working with a marketing person, you may not concentrate so much on the inner workings of it, but more, a quick elevator pitch of how that's done. And as you go through this, as you're looking at pattern libraries, as you're doing your research on emerging tech, and you're looking at all these different sources, you want to make sure you collect your ideas, right? And some of the tools that I currently use, one of them is called Dropmark. It's a lot like Pinterest, but better, in my opinion. And what it's good at is you can bookmark links or pieces of content, and you can throw them in a collection or a grouping, right? And you can collaborate with others. Pretty much what Pinterest does, but it's sort of what I found, works best for me. And I'm sure there are many others, but that's when I used to bookmark stuff. And then Evernote is my sort of tool for everything. So I can throw screenshots in there, audio, video, and it's pretty easy to search. So those are some of the examples, but I'm sure there are many more. And I'm just going to pause right now, and I want to do a quick exercise. I'm just going to give this a try. skip that part.
You can scale it down if you zoom
Yeah.
down the web browser and look better.
I lost my screens. Okay. Let's just keep going. I want to do a quick poll and hear what you guys, what everyone uses here in terms of tools. I thought it was going to be a good exercise, so we can maybe share some of that. Again, I'm sharing a lot of the tools that I use, but I'm sure everyone has some good secrets. And just picking up here, the next activity and the one that is the most critical is sketching and collaboration, right? And this is typically not something done by exclusively designers or experienced designers. It's something that anyone can be involved with, right? So whether you are an executive, an entrepreneur, project manager, you can be part of it. And I'll take you through what that looks like. It starts with collaboration, right? I think that the nature of us UXers is that we need and we have to collaborate with others. We don't come up with our thinking in a vacuum. We have to go and talk to the visual designers, the copywriters, the project managers, the client, and we get to do a lot of collaboration, right? And that's just a number up there. 82% of us do that, right? And what it's suggesting is that you're probably not going to be successful if you just sit at your desk on your own trying to sketch and come up with ideas, right? You want to do that and bounce it off of your designers, your client, and get feedback. And it's not only you that come up with ideas, right? So you may just be the facilitator and you're putting a piece of paper in front of someone and then they're going to tell you a better idea that then becomes the solution, right? And at that point you're only facilitating. And an exercise that I do often is Design Studio and sketchboards. This is what I'm going to be doing this afternoon. I believe the session is titled Prototyping, and I don't think you got updated on time, but it's going to be all about this. And what it is, Design Studio is a workshop where it's usually 6 to 8 people in a room, right? And we all get in there for, say, about 45 minutes. And what I do is, if I have my personas, my user scenarios, requirements, user flows, right? I put them up on the wall, right? And that serves as inspiration as we go through the exercise, right? So going back to what I covered first, those inputs now become useful, right? That they're not just something that you save in your laptop and you put away. You want to make sure you print those out to get them visible, right? So that is the setup, and the key piece here, if you see here in the background, I used this piece that I could carry with me because I was flying to Connecticut and then coming back home. I was able to take my sketches and then roll it up and then bring it home. So if you get into this, that might be some idea, good idea. But what's represented here on the top line is very fuzzy and hard to see. It is the journey, and in this case, I was working in the healthcare space. So what it represents is the end-to-end journey for a healthcare company. And those yellow stickies are my different phases, right? And also represent the different scenarios, right? So it starts with someone looking at a doctor, going into the doctor visit, then following up on the claim, making a payment, et cetera, et cetera. And how we got to this is, again, I have my setup with requirements, personas, scenarios. I have my sketchboard, right, empty at first. And we start with the first scenario here, right? And if this were, if the scenario was someone looking at a doctor, right? We'll start with that, and then I would time box it to say 3 minutes, right? And I would say, okay, now we're gonna solve for, how to look at a doctor, right? How do you do that activity, right? And then we go for 3 minutes, and we time it, right? And everyone starts to sketch, right? And I've done this with project managers, copywriters, visual designers, different backgrounds, not just designers. And not everyone's comfortable with that, right? Because you might think you need to have, beautiful drawings and, high fidelity, good-looking sketches. But it's not about that. It's about generating quantity, right? So if I have 6 or 8 people, I'm going to get 6 different ideas. That when the 3 minutes are over, we go around the table and everyone is presenting their idea. And that's all it is, right? You go around the table, and as you're going around, everyone is nodding their head, or we like this, we like that. And then the best ideas or the best themes come out of that process, right? And me as a facilitator, I'm taking notes, okay, for looking at a physician or a doctor. This seems to be the right idea, and where we got consensus, right? And what's good about that is, again, you're working with different backgrounds, different disciplines. So it gives you that confidence that you're not working in an isolated way or in a vacuum. You're involving other people, and that gives you a sense of confidence. So this slide here sort of brings it all together. So kind of what I've been covering, right? Like taking your inputs and using your inspirations and now starting to visualize those. And then sometimes you want to get to prototype, right? And there are many tools out there that you can use, and I know for sure that some of you here are developers and you guys can build stuff on your own, which is ideal. But if you don't, then you're kind of handicapped like me. And I particularly rely on Axure, if you're familiar, or Ideation. Those are kind of my 2 favorites. But there are many more. Cooper.com has done a good job at compiling, different products that are out there. One that I got to see recently is Flinto. Framer I heard of, I never tried it, but the gist of this is that there are many tools and none of them are good at everything, right? So when you're looking at prototyping, you want to make sure you pick what works for you, right? Some things might be overkill, some things may not fit what you're trying to do, like some of these are unique to mobile and like native. They're unique tools for that. So again, there's no single tool that does everything. You can really just go and research and find what works for you. And then last, if you get to come up with a prototype, then you can do user testing and validation, right? And in an ideal world, you will get it all right, but what's good about this process is that you will get faces like this from people that get confused and comment on your product or your design. And I know that's not what we look for, but that is what makes your product better, right? When you thought you had an idea, but you didn't really solve it, and so you have to go back, rethink it, and iterate, right? So you may have to go back, sketch it, maybe put it in a prototype, come back and validate it. And this jives really well with the practice of lean UX, if you're familiar, where you iterate really fast, right? And it also applies to Agile, where again, you don't want to spend months and weeks, coming up with something, and then you find out it doesn't work. So, and testing doesn't have to be expensive again, right? Like, You can do moderated testing, which is probably maybe on the expensive side, right? Like you want to make sure you recruit the right audience that simulates your persona. You want to have a moderator that is not biased, right? That's just one setup. You may go with something more, a little bit informal on moderated. Usertesting.com is one of the tools where it's pretty easy to test in a matter of hours. So that's an option too. Or you might do guerrilla testing, where you just simply, you might even take your sketches and do cutouts with that, and then walk up to your coworkers or your family or your friends and do paper prototypes. Those are not as popular, but again, that's kind of a cheap and quick way to get feedback. And to summarize, again, I took you through what my process looks like, and it hopefully inspired you, right, with some ideas, some of the tools, and the process or the workflow that this entails. So to recap, again, make sure you understand the problem, right? Don't just jump to sketching and putting things around, right? Make sure you spend the time wrapping your head around, absorbing information, understanding the business, understanding the user. And inspiration can be anywhere, right? And you need to find what works for you. It took me some time to find that process, which I started to repeat over and over. And it's just a matter of doing it, right? You might encounter that you're not as comfortable with books, that you find inspiration when you're practicing sports. I don't know. But find whatever works for you, and definitely sketch. So it's a simple activity, but it's also daunting for some people that are not comfortable. Again, just drawing. But it's not about the quality or how beautiful it is. It's about representing your thoughts and being able to speak to it, right? So if you're a project manager, feel free to do that, right? And walk up to your designer or if you're a developer, right? And say, okay, here's what I'm thinking, right? And that really facilitates communication. And again, validate your ideas and iterate, right? As fast as you can. All right, well, thank you so much. And you can find me on Twitter at Diego Baca. I'll try to post this and the links that I mentioned. And, sorry I couldn't run the poll. I wanted you to really capture some of your thoughts, but thank you so much.
Very nice.